Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It is Saturday, July 18th, Sunday, July 19th, for those of you across the pond and beyond. Welcome to We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I'm so glad you guys could join us this evening. I'm your host, TessaTNT, and I hope you guys had an awesome week and a rockin' beginning to your weekend so far. Thank you so much for joining us on one of our many outlets. You can find us live right now on Spreaker.com under We Are Paradox Media. You can find us live on Periscope, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Tumblr, YouTube, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, as well as Podcast Addict. So tonight I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight we will be doing the Paradox Crypto Corner, and tonight we are joined by weekday host SleepyDave Davenport as well as Jack Mackeral. Hey guys, welcome and thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Hello, thank you.
How are you doing? And thank you for having us.
I'm so excited. I thought I was going to have to read everybody some urban legends and discuss that tonight, but we pulled something awesome together last minute here.
Yeah, well, we can do some urban legends later. Those are always fun, too.
For sure.
Well, some of these cryptids are considered urban legends. Even if they're acknowledged by the federal government, they're still considered urban legends, maybe rural legends. And I am referring specifically to the Washington State Environmental Atlas, which is an official government publication in 1974-75 at $200,000 of taxpayer money, and that was 1974-75 dollars, under one of the animals officially listed in the state of Washington. Under the letter S, it lists Sasquatch as an official animal of the state of Washington. And in Skamania County, Washington, it is protected under law. You are not to harass, harm in any way a mythical creature that is supposedly an urban and rural legend. I would like the accountability for this document and these contradictory statements. Okay, does it exist or doesn't it? Any opinion, Tessa?
I believe it does, and I've known several people that have had encounters. I haven't had an encounter myself. I did get pictures of prints, like Bigfoot tracks up at a mine that we were guarding, and we did hear boulders being tossed down the side of this mountain, but we didn't see anything. But I did find tracks and take pictures of those. Unfortunately, I didn't have any plaster cast or anything on hand. I should have just gone and grabbed a bag of flour and some water or something. But yeah, it was interesting. I've always believed it exists. I've heard so many different stories, and you know, I'm one of those type that believe anything's possible. It's until proven otherwise to me that it's not. But it's pretty awesome. And you were telling me about, you know, the S under the Atlas, so on and so forth, Sasquatch being in there, and the government doesn't just throw money at you know, jokes or funny things like that. I also found online this fella went on YouTube and was showing these maps, this map that he had found at a yard sale, and it was an Air Force map, and it actually showed different animals as well as Bigfoot on there. And then another person saw his video and sent him another map from a different year, but he's got two maps now that show Bigfoot on there.
And why would government maps and government documentation list a mythical animal, and they list it under the name of Sasquatch? Bigfoot is a common term that the average person uses, but the federal government apparently has it listed as Sasquatch. Now, why in the world would they do that if the thing didn't exist, and why would it be protected under Washington state law and acknowledged by the United States federal government if this animal is a joke? And this is by the Army Corps of Engineers. I'm looking at something right now on YouTube, and it says, Sasquatch in the U.S. Army 1975 Washington Environmental Atlas, and this is the state of Washington, and I have the closed captioning coming up, so I can read it as we're on the air. Well, but why in the world? And it said, eats mostly vegetation, meat sometimes, distinctly human-like form, very agile and powerful. And this is all in the Washington State Atlas for an urban legend? I've never heard of such a thing. And you can look it up in Skamania County, Washington. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I put the link in the chat room for people as well. And for those listening, let me read the link because it also gives it's the Pine Barrens Institute.com/cryptid/2018 8/18 cryptid history of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Bigfoot. So that's the whole article, and they actually, I guess you would, lasers. Well, I can't even think of. Remember in the old days, you'd put it on the laser thing, and you'd make a laser scanner. It looks like it was scanned in.
Scanner, yes.
Yeah, they scanned the image in from the book onto the computer, so they get to actually
onto the computer.
Yeah. They get to actually see.
And again, why, if this creature is a joke, is an urban legend, why are there laws protecting it? And I read the laws. Originally, it was the lowest level of felony to harm a Sasquatch in Skamania County, Washington. And then they amended the law to make it the highest level of misdemeanor. So not only did they create these laws with taxpayer money, but then modified them years later with taxpayer money for something that is a joke. I like to look up dash cam videos because that is usually something that can't be faked, isn't faked. When you're cruising along at 40 plus miles an hour and something runs in front of you, usually in the distance because it can hear the car engine or feel the vibration in the ground. But these, according to our government, these things exist. That Freedom of Information Act file was requested from Seattle, Washington. I'm reading this, and you can read it. It's on page 53 if you want to go through the whole PDF. So Washington State Atlas, and here's the newspaper article. Engineer Corps book recognizes Bigfoot, and they list it officially as Sasquatch. That's an interesting use of our taxpayer money. Okay? And these laws are still on the books in the state of Washington. Again, they've been downgraded from the least severe felony to the highest level of misdemeanor. And I'm looking at it. I do think it's something. I do think the reason it is protected under law because I believe there are a limited number of these animals. They're not like rats. They're not everywhere. And I believe that there is a very limited number, and that it's listed because of that. And I think that's the loophole.
Yeah, they have so many human traits. Like, it's like homicide if you kill these. And it's not just in Washington. There's several counties. There's not other states, but several counties in other states that do have laws against harming or shooting Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
In Oregon and I believe Texas. And again, why would you have laws protecting something that's an urban legend? Because I think that there's a lot more to this. And I think that to be formally acknowledged in academia would throw the quote-unquote theory of evolution. I think that would throw that into the washing machine. So, because I do believe this is, what is the giant animal, the bones they found in China, Gigantopithecus, I think is the pronunciation. I believe this is a descendant of that bloodline, and I believe they are very few and far between. And I believe that the reason there's all this supposed cover-up is that it would screw up Darwin's chart and his theory of evolution. So I'm going to see if I can pull up some of the best videos I can pull. I'm going to set this down for just a moment.
No worries. So, Sleepy, you were talking earlier about an account that your friend had told you, his experience with Bigfoot or Sasquatch, whatever you'd like to call him.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. I'll be right back now. Yeah, my buddy, Riz, before he passed, he told me this story many times. So, when he was 12, so this was, he was born in 85, so this was about 1997, where he lived in Maryland back then. He lived on the road called Defense Highway. It was a main road. And his house was set back from the road, so it had a big front yard. And we were out there hanging out one day because he liked to have barrel fires in his backyard. He had a huge backyard, had a barn, and had built another shed out there. Had a big swing set for the kids, so take the kids over there. So he's telling me the story one night, and he says, "Oh, you'll never catch Bigfoot." I said, "Oh yeah, why is that?" He says, "Oh, they're interdimensional." And this is coming from a blue collar guy, somebody who's not into cryptos, doesn't really, finds it interesting, but doesn't give it much any thought than that. Melody. And so, anyways, he says, I was 12 years old. I'm in my living room, and I'm on the couch, and it's pouring out rain. And he's walking me on this property as he's telling me the story. And and I said, "Well, what about us? Where were all the houses and all the condos and everything at the time?" He goes, "Oh, those were all woods." He says, "Everything was all woods." He says, "You crossed the fence highway." He says, "It was all nothing but woods back then." And he says, "So I'm sitting on the couch, looking at the rain, and it was lightning out and thunderstorm." And he says, "Out of the woods, I see this big, huge, tall, black Sasquatch walk out of the woods across the road." And as he's walking across the road, he's looking both ways. He says he walks to where my mailbox is here, and he walks down because when you turn onto his property, it's a gravel driveway. And then if you drive further up, there's white rocks that he later put down. So he says, yeah, Bigfoot, this big black Bigfoot walks down here. He walks over to this part of my yard. He says a big black circle literally opened up in the ground. Bigfoot jumped into it, and the black circle closed, and then I saw, the ground again and where it was raining. And I took a double take, and he goes, I ran outside, and I'm looking down, and he said, the interesting thing about this circle in his yard is no matter how much new sod he would put into it, no matter how many times he tried to fill it, it would always revert back to this portal shape. And the grass wouldn't fully grow. Most of the grass inside this patch was dead. You could have the rest of the yard could look perfectly green, well manicured, but just one section, man. He said, he's like, I've tried for years, man, to get it to grow. It just won't do it. He goes, I just assume the portal's still there. He's like, I don't know how to open it or if it can be opened, because that's where Bigfoot jumped in, and that's why I say you'll never catch one. And he says, I've seen it with my own two eyes. So, and I have part of that on video of him talking about it as well, in the portal on his yard, as well as the other weird things that have gone on his property.
That's pretty awesome.
Well, and that's interesting. Go ahead, I'll be quiet.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I think these could be portals, but I don't think they can, create one, because there's been several times when they have been sighted, such as the Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, where a bunch of passengers saw this Bigfoot running in the field next to this train, and there was nowhere it could hide, because this is basically an open field. So yeah, until the train passed, there was no relief for him. He didn't just create a portal and jump in, but I think there are different portals or whatnot around that are there for their use. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry, Jack.
Well, I'm looking at National Geographic has even spent money researching the Yeti in the Himalayas. And there is a National Geographic where they're filming something different, and in the background, you can see something in a big furry suit on two legs running. Now, one of my questions is, where in the world do you get a Bigfoot suit, and can you run in it, and is there a minimum height requirement for one of these suits? These are questions that if it's a hoax, these are questions that, why would National Geographic spend money and their equipment and their resources looking for this? And again, where do you get one of these suits? And if you and I were to wear one, would we be able to run in it? So, there are questions regarding the veracity of this creature, but then there certainly are questions regarding whether or not it could be faked. Again, there's a YouTube movie, an hour and 50 minutes. Anybody can look at it. It's called Discovering Bigfoot. It's a documentary. Why would somebody spend money looking at something if they know that it is a hoax? And there are skeptics who have looked at evidence going, well, we don't know where this hair sample came from. Right here, Bigfoot on camera phone, National Geographic. Why would National Geographic spend its money doing that? The Vietnam War, they called them rock apes, and there were reportings of that. So Jane Goodall, I'm looking at it right now. Jane Goodall said this animal could be real. My personal belief is yes, but I believe that there is a government cover-up. Again, another National Geographic, Bigfoot in the Himalayas. Why would these people, these organizations, put money into this kind of thing if this was a joke? I think that it really defies the evolution that we were taught in school, and I think that's what they are intent on keeping a lid on. Police cruiser evidence finding Bigfoot. Animal Planet, and there's a 2-minute video. Boy, for the life of me, I don't know. I would have to think yes, but I think that you'd have to go deep into the forest of Skamania County, and you'd have to bring with you the smelliest type of bait that you could possibly bring. And my recommendation would be cans of Jack Mackerel. You open that stuff up. I know that's funny.
What about?
I know that's funny.
You had a thing to get to attract Dogman. I used to make funny of your idea to attract Dogman. I said, no, you're going to attract every critter from the desert but Dogman if you do that.
Well, if you and with this Jack Mackerel, it is the smelliest, god awful stuff that there is. My neighbor and I, we trap and fix the cats in the neighborhood. We trap them, we fix them, the vets tip their ears, and then we release them because I live in a neighborhood that has citrus trees, and those citrus trees attract rats that eat the citrus fruit. So these stray cats, they are the rat's worst enemy. But I use the Jack Mackerel to attract them, but it will attract everything. And I think if you go out there and spread this stuff around, you're going to attract every creature in the forest. Excuse me. And I think that would be an interesting result. There is a video from a police dash cam. I think it is in Georgia. I think it's a sheriff's department dash cam at about 2 a.m. with a sheriff and one other person in the car, and something up ahead of them in a black suit crosses this 2-lane blacktop road, and I believe the road is 16 feet wide. It's a rural road, and it does it in 4 paces, and that one is on YouTube.
Hey, what about the cryptid one you told me about on Cajun Cops? The one about the old man, yes. Remember?
Where
in the barn?
Where is? Yeah, let me find my notes on that one.
I didn't jumble you or anything, but I didn't. That just came to my mind because I watched one of them, but it's not the one that you told me. So I'll tell this one. You tell the one about the old man thing. So this one, cops were called out. It was like Cajun Justice or something like that. Cops were called out.
Cajun, I believe it's called Cajun Justice, and I'm looking for my notes.
And
go ahead.
So this lady called out. There was her horses were going crazy in her barn. Her barns were locked up, and she had just got done boarding her horses for the night. The horses were going crazy in the barn. And but before that, she says, I fed them. You have to groom them. Brush their manes and everything. Well, when the lady finally got into the barn to see what the ruckus was about, all the horses' manes were braided. And the kinds of braids that they were in was impossible to do in the time that she heard the ruckus, called the cops and everything. Just a matter of minutes, under 10 minutes. So who and what braided these horses' manes intricately? All of them, I don't know how many, but there were several, in a matter of minutes. Obviously the horses didn't like it because they were flipping out. So what went in there and did that? Would it be a cryptid? Would it be something supernatural? But that goes along the lines of, that kind of opens up your Cajun Justice story for this next one, which really would be.
Okay, let me find that.
It could be fairies.
I am looking.
In the meantime,
hold on. Let me
I've
find.
heard that Bigfoot or Sasquatch and fairies team up and work together. The Bigfoot and Sasquatch is the brawn, and the fairies are the brain. But it's pretty interesting, the different tales that are out there. Just trying to kill time while you're looking at that up, Jack.
Okay, where? Hold on. At one time, Tessa, I had listed for you the episodes. Where in the world?
You listed them for me too.
Yeah, I remember this story, and it was the same.
Got it.
Cool.
Okay, I found it. Episodes of a show. It was one season. It was called Cajun Justice. It was a cops show type, and I think it might have been National Geographic that did it. Cajun Justice. Let me type this in, and I have the episodes number. So for any of the listeners, give me just a moment. Let me type this in. Hold on.
Well, in the meantime, when I used to come home from work when I lived in Maryland, there would be this god-awful scream coming. I used to live behind a ravine, deep ravine, bushes, overgrown fauna, and just you could camp down there. You could probably live down there, and nobody would know you down there. But there used to be this animal that would sound like it was literally growling and screaming, and it sounded like it was attacking another animal, and the second animal sounded like it was just howling and crying out in pain. And it was the most eerie sound, and I managed to capture it on audio once, on video, and I uploaded it to a now defunct website that actually turned out allegedly to be a CIA site.
Oh,
posing, posing as a cryptid type of paranormal forum, and I won't get too much into it, but the person who allegedly called these three people out, there was a whole thing on it. That could be a whole show, but I'm not going to get into it. But so, anyways, they said it sounded like a fox screaming. So I went and I looked up foxes compared to my audio. It didn't sound the same, and I don't know what this animal thing was. I never saw it. I would see movement in the bushes, and I would see stuff moving, but I would never see it. I always hear it. Sometimes that thing would howl for 2 hours straight, and you hear that whatever it's attacking or whatever, just crying and howl. It was the most scariest thing. Melody I don't think she remembers. She used to come into our room and scare. What's that noise? It was pretty freaky.
Okay, guys, I found the show is called Cajun Justice. It was on for one. This is for all the listeners. It was on for one season, and it's episode 4, episode 5, episode 15, and episode 21. And I'm looking at one of them right now. I'm looking at a clip, and it is called the Rougarou. that is a legend down in Rougarou, Rougarou. Let me.
Say that they've seen would be the Rougarou.
A Rougarou.
It's chickens.
There's several stories that I've heard about. One was that it was a man that can turn into a wolf-like creature.
A smart creature, tall, hairy creature.
Well, what's going on?
And these
man?
are law enforcement people. What's that?
I said, what's going on? We hear your TV, but we can't see it, man. What's up?
Okay, I'm looking at a clip from the show Cajun Justice, and these are law enforcement officers that they're interviewing, and in uniform, in front of their cars, saying, we get radio calls about a Rougarou on their property, and I remember the one was very, very interesting. And I recall an older man called the sheriff. He had a farm, and he said something ran into his barn chasing his chickens. And so he shut the barn door to lock it in. He called the deputies out. The deputies came out, and as one lady deputy, as they were walking up to the barn door, which was closed, and elderly gentleman, and he spoke the French version of the language down there. I believe
Cajun.
it is called Creole.
Yeah.
The Cajun, the Creole, yes. And very few people still speak it. It's mostly the older generation. But
now this is what I
pardon me?
No, never mind. Just Melody is being excited about something. Go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, this lady deputy was walking up to the barn door, and this is on A&E, Cajun Justice. Whatever was in that barn, she goes, you have it trapped in here, and she's kind of rolling her eyes like she didn't believe it. She grew up in the area, and she's heard the legends, but she obviously didn't believe it. Whatever was in that barn shook that barn door and growled, made this frightening growl. She jumped back and pulled her weapon. A second deputy rolled up, and he said, and she told this deputy what was going on. They approached the barn door with their guns drawn. They opened the barn door, and inside they found the little old man neighbor of this fellow that owns the property. That was the only thing in the barn. A little old man in his 60s, little frail old man, and the owner of the property starts yelling at him, calling him a Rougarou, and then they start arguing in the Cajun Creole language. But it's documented, so anybody wants to look that up. The series is called Cajun Justice, and there are 4 episodes that have to do with unusual cryptid creatures. Episode 4, Episode 5, Episode 15, and Episode 21. And you guys are more than welcome to look that up, because I would like other people's opinions on what in the world they saw on this, what these deputies saw. Very unusual to this day. I mean, it struck me, and I have never forgotten it. So I documented it when these legitimate shows, police shows, have issues where deputies and or police officers encounter something paranormal or a beast of some type of legend. It's something to be noteworthy. There's some other cryptids. Again, the forest in western Pennsylvania along the Ohio border, there are supposedly, people have seen these, very, very large birds that are either the largest turkey buzzards that they've ever seen, or oversized California condors that are way out of place.
Hey, real quick before we get to flying wing things, I just want to give a shout out to Jim because he gave a link, MountSt.Helens.com, just cited Bigfoot photos. And it's
really?
It's MountSt.Helens.com with the word Mount spelled out, and sthelens.com/Bigfoot.html, and photos of Bigfoot will pop up. So thanks to Jim for that. I just saw that in the Spreaker chat. Says the report of early morning Sasquatch sounds of rats rumors to spread throughout the county, and early reports local game wardens leading an armed posse of some 400 men in pursuit of the abominable snowman. Those reports later proved false. So I don't know if some of these I would imagine maybe some are fake, some are real, but there's pictures though below of tracks that they found in the snow, and then them casting the tracks, and then artist renditions of what people saw. So it's not just a total hit piece on it. There is something to it. There's a story there.
Well, here's another point on this. If, and I've been to court before, if for a court case somebody has 10 witnesses that stand up and say, I saw this person, they were drunk and doing this or doing that, or if you call the police and said, look, we saw this guy out here and he was doing this and doing that. Well, there are hundreds of reports just in the state of Washington alone, and some of them by very credible people, law enforcement, who say, look, I was driving in a rural area. I work for the state. I work for the county. I was driving in a rural area, and up the road, somebody in a big dark suit crossed the road running. And if so many people testified in court, you'd have to say there is something to this. I genuinely believe that hundreds and hundreds of people cannot be all liars. They're not all on LSD and seeing things. And again, why would the federal government document something? But I do believe there is a cover-up. I do believe they are protected under law because of their limited numbers. Where I live, there is a small owl, maybe the size of your hand. If you extend your fingers from the palm of your hand to the tip of your fingers, there's a small owl in the area where I live, and it is protected under federal law, in danger of going extinct. I think that is what they are using. That is the angle that they are using to protect this creature, because I think people would go out there with their hunting rifles, and then there is the argument, nobody's going to believe it unless there's a body. Well, when an animal dies in the woods, usually within about 7 days to 10 days at the outside, predation and insects pretty much take all the flesh off the bones. So, that's going to be hard evidence. But it's also these footprints. How do you run in? And first of all, where do you get a set of Bigfoot shoes? And if you make your own, how the hell do you run around the forest in them? Somebody's going to get a broken ankle doing that. So, there's a lot of evidence on both sides of this argument. I would like to know more, and I'm hoping in my lifetime that we can get more evidence. But I think the methodology that they're using is anyone who reports seeing one of these animals is ridiculed to the point where people don't want to speak out. And that's a very good method to shut people up, is to use ridicule. So if anybody has any info, send it to Tessa, please. Any pictures, any articles in the back of small town newspapers, anywhere up in the Northwest or, again, in the Southeast, in Louisiana and Florida, that version of this animal seems to be a bit different, but there are a variety of types of horses. There are Shetland ponies, and then there are Clydesdale draft horses, and they differ by 1,000 pounds in weight. So I think that this is certainly possible.
Yeah.
Tessa, how about...
Yes?
Okay, I'm thinking, again, now, western Pennsylvania along the Ohio border, there have been rumors, sightings of enormous birds that look like puffed up turkey vultures. But again, we have Shetland ponies and Clydesdale draft horses. Is there an oversized bird living in the forest of western Pennsylvania? Some of that forest is so thick and so old, you couldn't hike through it. You couldn't get a horse through there, and to be on foot, you would be lost. That forest is so old and so thick. So I think there is a possibility. I would not rule out any of these particular cryptids. I do think that, and I've heard these stories of the thunderbirds, as they are called. I think that they are, again, some type of turkey vulture or condor breed. But I've heard of these for years. Occasionally, they're seen by pilots of small private prop planes that don't fly, obviously, as high or as fast as commercial jets. So I certainly think that one's possible. The Michigan Dogman, I have some questions about. I don't know if this thing is real, but again, if you take all the testimonies and you line them up in court, there's certainly something out there. And technically, Michigan and the upper Great Lakes area, a lot of swampland, a lot of areas where very few people go, where you can't even get an ATV in there. And the ground being so soft and so uneven, you would have difficulty getting a horse back in there. So I think it's possible. I think that some of these cryptids are certainly possible, but the academic world absolutely refuses to believe these types of things. Pandas were legend. The gorillas were legend until 100 years ago. A lot of these things were just myths.
Exactly.
Pardon me?
What type of gorillas were legend exactly? Because I just don't want people going, what
Probably
is he
the
talking about?
silverback gorilla?
That's correct. The silverback gorilla was legend. Until they finally, 100 years ago, roughly, the turn of the last century.
No.
Pardon me?
I said just weird to say turn of the last century, like 20th century now, or just go on. I'm sorry.
No, how about 120 years ago? How about the 19th century? I'm sorry, I'm getting old, and I still remember the previous century. So, and the Patterson film, and let me pull that one up, because there has been frame-by-frame analysis of
Well, when you were talking
Patterson
about
film.
the whatever justice it was, I can't remember right now, but about this Rougarou.
Cajun Justice.
Cajun Justice.
Yeah.
Okay, that reminded me of skinwalkers. Like here we have Native Americans that practice a certain religion or black magic or light magic or whatever you want to call it, but they can change form into dogs or other humans or, coyotes, wolves, or whatever. So this to me, like this person changing into a dog man, and then when they find him contained in this chicken coop, it's a man and not a dog man. So it's interesting to me. I wonder if there's some sort of Cajun or other magic going on there, because I know there's different tribes, Seminole, so on and so forth, and then African Americans colliding with that after being freed from slavery, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's very interesting that there are skinwalkers in other places other than here, because I have never heard of them until just recently.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to tell a quick story about the only known that I know of dogman sighting in Arizona up at Lake Roosevelt back in May of 1999. If you're familiar with Bryce Canyon, Jack Mackerel, it was the descendants of the Bryce family were out camping up at Lake Roosevelt. Now, he told a story on another paranormal radio broadcast, but through an email. But he was out there camping out at Lake Roosevelt. They took the boat out across the lake into a cove. Basically, he stated that they were in a place where Palo Verde trees were and desert brush. And I'm trying to think like where along Lake Roosevelt this would be, because if you look, Lake Roosevelt is a man-made lake. Are you drilling your teeth over there? No.
Reservoir.
But anyways, Dogman comes up the hill. They could see him like in the shadow, the moon, him and his brother or him and his father-in-law out there. So they grabbed a gun and they watched this thing come down off the hill, walk along the banks of the shore there, right around. And he shined his flashlight right at Dogman with his weapon drawn, and flashed it right in his face. And he says that Dogman was just as surprised to see us as it was as we were to see it. And then he kind of looked at me, and he looked in the direction of my father-in-law, and he looked back at me, and I said, "Should I shoot? Should I shoot?" And my father-in-law says, "No, hold out." And he said, Dogman kind of grunted and snarled, and slowly backed away, looking at him. Slowly backed up, and then slowly turned around and started walking back the way he came, occasionally looking over his shoulder, grunting at them. And then he got back to the top of the hill where he started out, and he turned around and he stood and he looked at them both, like still trying to decide, should I come back or should I just leave it alone? Well, he said, thank God he decided to leave it alone because he disappeared off the other side of the ridge.
Well, and here's the thing. I think, according to, again, the state of Washington and the federal government, Sasquatch is a legitimate animal. But on this Cajun Justice, this Rougarou, that's actually a whole different category to me. How could whatever shook this heavy wooden barn door and freaked out this lady deputy that she jumped back and pulled her weapon, and then when they go in, they find a little old man who happens to be the neighbor. He doesn't look like he could shake that wooden barn door on his best day. And so the shape-shifting from one animal to another, I have more questions than answers. But apparently this Sasquatch thing, and I'm looking at what was the Gimlin film in the 1960s. I first saw the still photos in a book when I was a kid, and that's what got me interested in all this. I think that's a legitimate animal. What this Rougarou is on Cajun Justice, for the life of me, I don't have a clue. I'm looking right now at the Patterson film.
Didn't the commenter in the room have something to say about Cajun?
Oh, yeah. They were saying that it's like a spoof reality show, for shits and giggles. But I mean, they could take...
What?
They could
Cajun
be taking...
Justice?
Yeah, they could be taking real stories and, recreating them, but I don't know. And then somebody else said that...
Justice was a...
And then somebody else said that A&E, said that it was an actual real show, so I don't know. There's a lot of stuff being said about it.
It was a one-season show. It was about rural deputies, and just like, the TV show Cops was on for years, there were other shows that tried to emulate the show Cops, but for the life of me, that particular, and there were the 4 episodes, beyond my explanation, beyond my ability to explain. Now, I'm looking at the Patterson film, the one that supposedly made Bigfoot a star, and this one, it looks like... Okay, now there's a fella here with a gorilla suit. Okay.
Well, Jack, I hate to interrupt, but we do have to go to our first music break. And on this break, we have King Cinnamon from Biafra, Nigeria, with Ale Imo Adarella and Fantastique. And then we have Hosni Bronx, who is originally from Jamaica, but moves back and forth from the Bronx of New York to Jamaica. And he'll be singing Dance as a Lion. You guys don't go back anywhere. We'll be right back after this musical break.
Yes.
We swap on the beat.
Kanyi kele Chineke makwa na limo mbunde njemono. Kanyi kele onye nwuwa imakwa na limo mbunde njemono. Imo alime kele Kerelo, Alimo, Alime, Kerelo, Alimo State, Alime, Kerelo, Alimo, Alime, Kerelo, Alimo State, Alime, Kerelo, Alimo, Alime, Kerelo, Democracy, Kerelo, Ndime, Kerelo, Alimo, Alime, Kerelo, Alimo, Alime, Kerelo, Alimo State, Alime, Kerelo, Alimo, Alime, Kerelo, Democracy, Kerelo. Ndime Meriela, Emeka Marama, Ebere Marama, Obana Marama, Yes Lady Marama, Her Excellency, Emeka Edio Hama, Emeka Edio Hama, Omenka Unanya Edio Hama, Omenka Unanya Wa, Emeka Meki Modima, Emeka Meki Modima. Emeka puta no boy, oh yeah. Wa wulelo, Emeka puta no boy. Woko madima, we me wem poso. Emeka meki modima, Emeka meki modima. Ndem jejemba, mwan jejemba. Ndem jemano, deputy governor must get chilike. Gerani ronna karaka, woko madima porabo. Deputy governor wile dere gema, alukuta dere gema, Alimo State dere gema, ala Nigeria mara gema. Onye jemano, standing one muche karaka, onye babamba, President Good Life Foundation shirike, President General, Senate Group of Companies, President General. Financial matter karaka, alo were dirigima, alambise dirigima, Alimo State dirigima, ala Nigeria maragima, onye jemano, Franklin Negi shirike, Mebe Arabido Hotels, ABC Transport karaka, alo were dirigima, alambise dirigima, Alimo State dirigima, ala Nigeria maragima. Uchonya go chande, Honorable Woko Madima, onye hụrụ na keleli ya o. Ma wugi ye, Ginando tugio, ma wunule, Njiji gariji n'ala Imo State yo. Ma wugi ye, Ginando tugio, ma wunule, Mini garizo n'ala Imo State yo. Alo were dirigima, alo were dirigima, Alimo State dirigima, ala Nigeria maragima. The chairman, Orange Drugs Limited, Jisa Anthony Ifani Chubundu Bises na Ishirike, Ikenga di Chele, pride of his people, most outstanding one, Okoma Marama, Iborabo, alo were dirigima, Alijato dirigima, Alimo State dirigima, ala Nigeria maragima. Honorable Jogwagu shirike, Honorable Bina shirike, Jere Labosa shirike, Tochukwu Kereke shirike, Okahu be shirike, Injina Benina di shirike, Onyamana construction, Woko Madima ikaraka, Onya shiwore hebowarani, Etemu imarama, Woko Mande Jemba, Woko Madima ikaraka, Quiz Popule, Ibo Felamo, Onyamana Pito, Akana Kumpa, ikaraka, Eziwa Mama, Mr. Ludiriwa, Woko Meje Jemba, CEO Elizabeth Ventures, ikaraka, Democracy Merielo, Ndime Merielo. Democracy Merielo, Ndime Merielo, Alime Gerelo, Alime Gerelo. Thank God I'm from Imo State. Emeka has come to rejuvenate. Imo State, make you jubilate, make you celebrate. Emeka shipwen be say, this one no be say them say. Emeka has come to rejuvenate. Imo State, celebrate, make you jubilate. Ala mekele His Excellency Achikudenwa. Mekele kwa Excellency Dr. Kedo Hakim. Yemaka Right Honorable PDK. Nekelekwa Right Honorable Jones Oyereri. Ana mekele Senator Onyebuchi Mr. Empowerment. Nekelekwa Right Honorable Emeka Chinedu. Umo mimo lowali bia meziona limo. Alima Dilama.
Cliffito. We swap on the beat.
Like the water bam bam. King Cinnamon. Oh shit, baddest. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Put your brother, baby, gather something. Come on closer, baby, gather 19. I know you better, but I am the king. Your backside bigger than Bombay. Baby girl, broncotum. I like the way you wind your broncotum. Baby girl, broncotum. I like the way you wind your broncotum. Jamaica, Ghana, shout out to the ladies in Asia, Nigeria, South Africa. Say me love you. Please me, baby. Yeah. Turn up from you. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's go, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's go, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Give me love. Me want you, me love you. Give me love. Oh, give me love. Hey, please me, baby. Oh. Yeah, turn up from you. Yeah, take your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Shake your bam bam anywhere you day. Play your bam bam, it is a Friday. Come on, let's ball, it is a holiday. Anything you want, baby, I will pay. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. Fantastic. Baby girl, you romantic. King Cinnamon. You know what I'm saying?
We swap on the mix. Cliffito.
Welcome back, everyone, and thanks so much for listening tonight. We are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Tonight, we are joined by SleepyDave Davenport and Jack Mackeral. Unfortunately, Jack Mackeral had to leave because they were tracing the lines and almost tracked him down. But we're so grateful that he could join us tonight, and it was interesting to hear his perspective on things. But welcome back, Sleepy. Thanks so much for hanging out with me.
Thanks. It was the dream police were after him, the phone cops.
Yes.
Yeah, I was surprised actually that he got on the air because he seems to, I've been chiseling away at that mountain for years to get him. I remember when I was first started, he wouldn't, no way, no how, no sir, no way. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't even be in the same room with me when I would do the show. He would leave my house.
Oh,
at least in the ensuing years, he wouldn't be that bad. He'd actually hang out, but he wouldn't talk. And then when he got on the first time, a few weeks ago or a month, or whatever it was, I was shocked when he talked about his accident and his near-death experience and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Welcome,
I don't know. Whatever, I can understand. He's old school, not used to all this technology.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. I love his Jack Mackerel stance.
Yeah.
All the animals love Jack Mackerel. And the ladies, too.
Because I was making fun of him. I was like, oh, we're going to put out some chicken in the sea, too?
Well, it's funny. He's talking about Bigfoot suits. And I know there are Bigfoot suits out there. There's a particular page that I like on Facebook called Saxsquatch. And it's a Sasquatch that goes to different random areas and will play the saxophone with a bandana on his head and sunglasses and looking all cool. And then just recently I saw another video, and I believe it was Nuke's Top 5, or it could have been Chills. But yeah, this Bigfoot running along, and you could see how it looked like they were holding arm extensions because the way it was bent awkwardly as they were trying to run. And they probably didn't notice as they were doing it, but you could totally see it in the video. I think there are real videos, and I think there are hoaxes.
Yeah. Like with that creature I was talking about that I would hear outside of my condo, it was pretty creepy. If that was a fox, then that was the most scariest sounding fox I ever heard in my life. Because as I'm trying to, looking up fox sounds, fox screams, fox calls, trying to discern. But it was immediately debunked off the site as being a fox animal. But to my ear, I'm like, and I would play it for, Melody's mom. And she said, it's no fox. That ain't no fox. Oh, wait. Everybody else, that's no fox. You're being lied to. Okay, well. So who do you believe, I guess, at that point? And I never saw anything. I would rather think this thing was almost on a paranormal level, because though I would hear it and see bushes move, and I would literally stand out there, like in the driveway, because I had to walk around the front of the building. I couldn't get in through the back, so I had to walk through and buy some woods, and these things would be out there and just on the edge of the property, hiding whatever is. I don't know. It was just creepy, and it'd be growling. Right, right. You could hear it growling, whatever the hell it was. Just some of the times there was deep growls, high pitched screams. In between howls. All the while trying to discern. Well, that sounds like a this, or that's not. But you can't pinpoint it. And you really don't have an advantage, because I never spent time in the wilderness to even discern what kind of animal sound it may even be. So that's why I kind of turned to that, paranormal community. And then when they were doing the, telling me the fox deal, I just could not find anything to match it. So that's that on that old story. Kind of elaborate a little more on it.
Yeah, fox can sound pretty freaking freaky. I remember doing a paranormal investigation once, and we were at the very end, and we're like, all right, let's end the session and let's pack up our equipment. And right as soon as we said that, there was a screaming noise coming from outside, and we all looked at each other and ran down the stairs, ran out the door, and there was a fox all by itself out there in the drive. But it just sounded insane, and it was during mating season, I guess, for the fox. But you're talking about these different, like, lower and higher and whatever. Generally, they stay along the same tone, so that's pretty interesting. And there's so many recordings. If you couldn't find one, I mean, that's just odd. Too bad you couldn't record it at the time.
I just couldn't find one. You know, I wish I still had it because all that got lost in the old computer and all that. And, of course, now that site's debunked and doesn't exist anymore, which I find kind of funny after the guy allegedly outs him for being a supposed, I'll say, alleged CIA site. The site goes down, right? And then the site comes up almost under the same name, but under it was like a .net or a .something. And that was up for a few months. And then when the other guy, the hacker, I don't want to call him a hacker, but the guy was calling him out, he knew his stuff, called out that website and everybody on it. It was they just moved over here, and then that website went down, and then they never resurfaced. Also, here's another one for the masses, and I say allegedly. AboveTopSecret.com is another 3-letter agency-run site. So careful if you go there. Now, that's not me saying that. That's this guy who went by a moniker Reactor 1967. And interestingly enough, he had. We could do a whole story. It was about time travel and how he could time travel with his computer. And he figured out a system and how to find files, and not only in the past, but in the future. And he was able to claimed to be able to send emails and messages to himself back into the past as well as the future. And he put the program on basically the rudimentary of how to do it on open source. And then on YouTube, he started doing all these instructional videos, but he never talked in them. He would just show you on the screen. And so on his blog, he would talk about his dealings with these 3-letter agencies and how they how they snuck into his house, how they tried to break into his files. One time, how he was drugged with his favorite drinking glass, how they actually stole his drinking glass, calling these agents out, and stuff like that. Hold on, Mel. So it was really, his whole blog on it was something, and it was up for all of 2017. He was all over Reddit, all over Above Top Secret, all over these different websites that any researcher really would go to, telling his story, and they would block and ban him, shut the thread down, and he's kind of vanished. His blog spot and everything's gone now. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if they got to him. I don't know if it was just a nice little story, but this guy seems serious, and anybody can look into it. It's called The Conspiracy Against Time Travel, I think is what he called his research on it.
Yeah, it's interesting how many different things you see out there that could be time travelers. And I've seen different videos as well of somebody actually like going into the store, like kind of walking through the door, but you see this like pulse and he goes in, grabs something and then pulses out. But you see people like, when Kennedy got assassinated, somebody holding a cell phone recording the freaking thing. Even a girl holding even a girl in I believe it was a painting, and originally, and I don't know if this could be time travel or a freaking Mandela effect, but before she was holding a little book that, they would have either scriptures or notes or whatnot in there, and everybody would carry around this certain little book, but then later on she's holding a cell phone. So it's just interesting the different things that you do see in different eras. Could this be photoshopped, or did this picture actually change?
Oh, I've seen certain things. There was one I saw recently, and I was trying to discern if you look up the album by Roger Waters, Radio Chaos, back in the 80s, he made, I don't want to say a short film, but it was a film concept of the album. And the famous DJ Jim Ladd played the DJ, and he also did the voice on the record. Well, if you look at Radio Chaos done in the 80s with the videos with, Roger Waters and the girls in the studios, and they had people playing the radio announcers and stuff like this. So I was watching it the other night because I've seen the film before, the videos. And so I was watching it in succession, and then I think the song, I think it was track 4, I'll have to look again. but there was an edit in there of surveillance of a store, of a cell phone store, which I thought very interesting, because this supposedly was shot in 1987, this film, and they blotched out the employees' faces, and the guy, the employee, chases the dude out of the store, and he pulls a cell phone from his pocket and he starts dialing. But the rest of the video is what the original film was, which came out in 1987. So my question would be, why would one person go through the whole trouble to edit one part in? And so I'm trying to look it up if it's on the same, I'm trying to look for other copies of the same film, and it's showing the same thing. The guy in his cell phone around. I'm like, man, I don't recall that, but everything says it's original. Says it was made, filmed 1987. So, what's there? Is this a case of the Reactor 1967? He even concluded and went to as far as to say that the internet itself has the capability to bring all the timelines together since the inception of it somehow. And if you can crack that code, then you can virtually send any message back or forward, warning. So we have to be careful. If any of this is amount of it's true, man, talk about a matrix. And then we have Mr. Elon Musk wanting to put microchips in people's heads, and I just read a story the other day. It'll alleviate anxiety, depression, the happy pill permanently in your brain. That sort of thing. Didn't mean to go off on that, but I know it's a cryptid night, but, weird stuff.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be talking about all kinds of different stuff tonight because the plan kind of went askew. Several people that generally are here I could not get a hold of. And, I was going to, like I said, read urban legends, but yeah, I have no problem talking about different things going on because it's just insane and it does affect us, whether or not we realize it or notice it. It's just very interesting to me. It's mind-blowing. What the hell's going on? You talk about the Matrix, and they have this new Randonautica thing out, and they're basically saying like it's messing with the Matrix or using the Matrix somehow. I don't get it.
What is it?
Randonautica, and it's really hard to explain, but they take a number generator and they generate numbers and find different anomalies, whether it's a void, an attractor, an anomaly, or there's two others that you can look for.
Reactor 1967's program.
Yeah, and this is done. Go ahead.
No, it takes these. It's something having to do with checksums. I was trying to explain it to Mooney one night because he was going to look into it and all that, but I think other things happened. He got sick or whatever. I don't know if he ever did, but he nodded out on me earlier. I'm like, oh geez, I talked the poor man to sleep. He's
going to start having to pay you for that.
Yeah, right. I'm like, I'm sorry, Moon. I didn't mean to talk you to sleep. But I'm trying to find this thing on Reactor. But what's it called again? I want to look it up.
Randonautica. So it's like spelling random, but leaving the M off and Nautica next. Randonautica. And it's got a black background and a gold coin with an owl with its head tipped to the side. A lot of people say the owl's head is cut off, but it's not. Owls have really weird necks. You can spin it around, they can tilt it this way and that, but yeah, it's got a little baby owl on it, and then it's got the name Randonautica on it, and then some sort of Latin written on there, and I can't remember what exactly that meant.
Oh, okay. This isn't really exactly what he had. His I thought it was something else. I thought this. Never mind. His was something like you could actually send messages into the past or somehow. So I wrote him an email, right? And basically, if this is true, could you give this person a message? Blah blah blah. And he wrote me back, and nothing but the email was ha 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 ha. You think I'm gonna fall for this, agent? Ha ha ha. And I started laughing. I goes, the guy thinks I'm a government agent. Well, that'll just go to show you, I don't want to say the level of paranoid, I'll say the level of security that he has to vet. Because if he goes and actually proves this to an agency, they can immediately turn around and say, allegedly, I would guess, national security, we're confiscating. So imagine if you could send a message back into the past to Bush, to Trump, to whoever, or hide national security secrets into the future. I mean, you know, these are kind of echoes of what Basiago said back 10 years ago on Coast to Coast AM. You know, among his rantings and about time travel, he'd say, oh, that's where they'd hide, you know, top secret information. You know, they'd travel to the past and hide it. They'd travel to the, you know, future and hide it. You know, he claimed that Obama, you know, was in the jump room to Mars and all this fantastical stuff. I really don't put any credence to what he says because I challenge him on some things. In the early days of his coming on the air and coming out and talking about it, he requested help in research and somebody that was near the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. Well, guess what? SleepyDave used to live about 30 minutes from the Library of Congress and the National Archives, and he wanted somebody to help out with all this and access that stuff that he couldn't physically get to. So I offered, hey, dude, what do you need me to look up? Sent one email to him. He wrote me back, oh, great, fantastic, I'll keep in touch. I wrote him back, nothing, stonewalled me, ghosted my ass. Okay. So when I hear these guys come out years later and people follow them and they think that what they say is gospel or they're some sort of declassified or blower, you know, whistleblower, I question it. Either the guy's, you know, a shill agent or he's, you know, got issues or he just wants attention. It's not for me to judge. But you really have to, you know, I challenged him. I said, I'm willing. Where do you want me to look in the National Archives? I got a card. Because when you go in, you have to register, have to show your ID, and only researchers can get in. So, and then once you prove you're a researcher, they get, I don't know about now, but 10 years ago, back in 2008 when I got the card, it was like that. So he didn't take me up on it. And I, you know, kept emailing him, hey, you know, nothing. So that's my story. I'm not going to talk bad about him, but that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, with a certain app that's going on now, and it's really big because of the lockdown and everything, but it's strange the different things that people have found, different dwellings that obviously somebody's living here, but nobody's there. Different things being found, even bodies, like a body in a suitcase was found at one location, and then a person that had just been shot and his old lady was clinging to his body was found at another location, and it's just like, how are they doing this? And it's all over the world that this is happening. They can't have people, like so many people all over the world doing this at no charge. Are they manipulating the Matrix? If there really is a Matrix, like, it just makes a lot of people question what's going on. And one of the things you do while using this app is you focus on your intent. So your intent, a lot of times people say death or, you know, shadow men or haunting money. Or, yeah, money. Yeah. And I did see a video where a guy did find money. That was insane.
You did?
Mm-hmm. But it's like, did they...
Found it and found...
I didn't find money. I saw a video where a guy had found money, and they had 3 different intentions. One guy had the intention of death, the other one had the intention of money, and the other one had the intention of Lassie. He was thinking Lassie. And they finally get to this spot where there's a bunch of skins. One looks like a dog that's in this missing poster in this other portion of the barn, hanging from the wall. Another guy... So that's Lassie and death all in one. and then the other guy kicks over this bucket, and there's like a stack of hundreds. And it's Canadian money, of course. But, I mean, he found money. It was just insane. Is
well,
the setup?
See, in this case, the logical answer, I think, would be when you're downloading this app, you are then linking into some Black Ops thing, that something that's already been predetermined, pre-whatever. They're testing out what we heard about being able to read thought wave patterns, things like this. So they actually have this technology probably to hone in on you right away. It actually makes sense of all the puzzle pieces I've been reading about in mind control research and being able to remotely read minds. Because if we go back to Dr. Jolly and West, and I think Delgado, I think it was Jolly and West actually, was working on decoding thoughts as words and pictures as words, like being typed out on a tintype machine. And this was back in the 70s. And even I think earlier on, but I think it started really in the 70s, if my memory serves me correctly. So if they can do that then, 40-something years later, what can they do? So it could have something to do with that. And it's also a great way to cover, to anonymously, I just stumbled upon the story about the dead body. Okay, well, who did that? You're not a part of it. Of course, you can prove that you were part of the app and, you had nothing to do. Okay, so you're, I think, legally safe there. Doesn't mention that these people are arrested in any connection with finding this corpse. So it's like a game, like a spy network game. The underworld brought out into the open, so to speak. And we're all guinea pigs. Whether it's the Matrix, I don't fully go along with that. Maybe the universe is mathematical because God created math. So we want to get down to it. We can hear talks that the chair isn't really there because if you break down something to its smallest part, the normal thinking is it's going to keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. No, there's a finite to it. Once something gets small, so small it breaks apart, and then it's everywhere at once. If that makes any sense. Chuck Missler did a good talk on this. I'll have to find the link, but he talked about the Matrix. If you type in Chuck Missler Matrix, even though he used biblical references, he does use scientific, data and things like that. So there's one good source to get really a good handle, and especially if you're a layman on the term. Hold on a second, honey. I think you'll get a good understanding of what he's saying about our world in regards to the Matrix and how it fits in really to the biblical aspect. Actually, I mean, I don't say I agree with it, but like I said, it's something to look at.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because when you start this app, you have different things you can use. You can use the Wi-Fi, the internet. It has several different options, and one of them being like a college in Australia. I can't remember the exact name of this college, but it's like you can choose from these random things. A lot of people use the college one. Some people use just their internet, whatever, but it's just weird, the different outcomes and stuff. And a lot of times people are filming this, so that covers, did they do this or not? You're filming when you get there. Of course, the evidence is going to say yay or nay, but the ones that found the body in the suitcase, I feel so bad for them because these are like high school age kids, and they made the girl go down there and open it up, and just the smell that came off of it was just insane. But yeah, they let them go, and they were filming as they left. We're leaving the crime scene, and all these police cars and ambulance and coroner and whatnot going on, and it's on the news. But it's interesting. It's piqued my interest, and I want to go out and do it. I just, I'm still working on getting out and doing that away from other things that I have to do. There's things I want to do, things I have to do.
It would be interesting to go out like where I can't make it, unfortunately, to the paranormal outing, and then do a random Monica and see if you find anything like out there. Maybe find a stash of gold somewhere, a stash of gold coins or something.
That'd be awesome. Yeah,
there's
unfortunately.
So much.
Go ahead.
How's this? There's so much out there, and I wasn't joking. Like I think last year I talked about it. My family, because you had Chris on one night talking about trying to tell me where my family gold was buried in Kentucky. That's a true story, though. It is somewhere buried there in Kentucky, Aurora area, somewhere. I'll have to look in the family history.
Yeah, I got family from Kentucky. The only time I went to a family reunion was in Kentucky with a lot of people that I did not know. But it was interesting, and there was a lot of good food. But that'd be awesome to go out there with some dowsing rods and see if we could find it.
Yeah. He had he was born in 1815, I think died in 75. So he would have a lot of the earlier gold coins that you really can't get because according to the family history, he had a whole stash. And my grandfather's aunt found a stash in 1937 when they were out down in there in that land that they still owned, farming. And he said that she dug up an old mason jar full of gold coins from the $2 to the $20 ones. And I said, you didn't guys think to keep any of it? He goes, it was the Great Depression. He goes, that fed us for months. I said, well, yeah, I imagine so. He goes, plus we had to turn it in. It was illegal. I said, well, what about collector value? He goes, boy, we weren't thinking that. He goes, when you're starving out on the fields and you're out there, pulling cotton, see, a lot of people think it was just the slaves. No, man, it was everybody in those days. Everybody was poor. I mean, the Dust Bowl hit my grandparents when they were kids really hard. So, look up the Dust Bowl, what it did to America in the 30s.
Yeah.
And they lived through it. And it was during the Dust Bowl era that they dug up this mason jar of gold coins. It turned out to be in the same area that's mentioned in my family tree. So it's there.
So they found these. I wonder if this was like a stash from Civil War time or whatnot. A lot of people stashed coins in random different places, as well as
it was a stash. Oh, are you talking about mine or something else? Sorry, honey.
Yours. Like, could it be Civil
No, this
War?
particular one. This particular one was from my ancestor. He was a blacksmith, and he ultimately ended up moving and living in Chicago. But before he did, he never got back to it. And nobody knew that's the whole thing. Before he moved, he didn't know he was going to move. I don't know what the story is, but he had buried about 5 or 6 mason jars full of gold coins, and it was very common to do that back in those days, especially if it's the 1850s or 1860s Civil War time. So he buried them, and then he retired and ended up as a blacksmith in Chicago. And he never returned to Kentucky to get his gold coins, and nobody in the family until my grandfather and his aunt found them in 1937. Because when I was telling him the story, I said, "Hey, man," I said, because it didn't ring a bell with him because my aunt and uncle had done our extensive research on our family history, so I ran across this story. So I said to my uncle, or my grandfather, I said, "You used to live down in Kentucky?" I said, "You ever heard of this guy?" And so I read him what my uncle found, and he goes, "Well, we found a jar of gold coins right down that property in 1937. I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, Aunt Shirley or Aunt someone, Aunt Shirley. I'll just say Aunt Shirley. Aunt Shirley found them. We were out there picking cotton, and Mama was planting the seeds, and all of a sudden I hear, "Oh my God, look what I found." She holds up mason jar of gold coins. I said, "You didn't keep any?" He goes, "Boy, we was poor." He goes, "We turned them in. We ate for months." And then he got serious. He goes, "It was a Dust Bowl." And then he wouldn't want to talk. He's like, "There's more down there?" I said, "That's what this says." And he stuck out his tongue. He's like, "Let's go." But, he was well dated by that time. Yeah. So I always do wonder, because if I had family money and backers to do it, I do have a general map and a general area of where it is. And I think right now it's I don't know if it's a city park or a state park, but it's a park. Yeah. And so you'd have to get permission, I think, from, city or state or county, one of the three.
Well, I mean, people go metal detecting in the park all the time. I mean, can we use one of those rolling ones that go like really deep and show anomalies and such?
I don't know. I looked in Aurora, Kentucky, and it was pretty big. But the problem with the family information doesn't give an exact spot, just gives a general area. So you could be searching within a 30-mile radius of his property, because they owned big property back then. I mean, gosh, the land was money back in those days. If you owned land, you were, you had it going. 1700s, 1800s. So, but that's my golden story. Well,
I mean, the Dust Bowl, that was scary in itself, not only because, all the dirt's blowing away, you can't grow food, no rain is coming, But people are literally dying from all this dust that they're ingesting and breathing, and it can happen all at once, or it can happen over a long period of time, depending on how well you protect yourself and how often the wind blows and causes, like, kind of like in Arizona, you guys have those, what is it called? Where the big
storms and dust devils.
Yeah. I remembered the name a little bit ago, but I forgot. I have all the timers. But yeah, it's just so scary, like the way nature is. Even fire, it's its own life force. So many scary things out there, but to die from that is just insane.
You'll see these huge dust storms every now and again coming through, rolling over the valley, rolling over Phoenix. There's a wall. It's like a wave of dust. And when it hits, sometimes you're out there. One time I was working and I had safety goggles because I was working at a security construction site. So they gave me safety goggles. So one hit when I was outside one day, and I'm out there, wearing these safety goggles. It was really cool to look through because, it wasn't hitting my eyes or nothing, but it was just insane. All the wind whipping through the foundations, the boards of the house, and you're walking through and all this. It was just, I had to pick up all the stuff that was knocked over and equipment and everything. But yeah, it's apocalyptic feeling when that stuff rolls in.
I want to say Habib, but I don't think it is. But yeah, like it reminds me of a huge tsunami ocean wave or something, but it's desert sand and who knows what else. And a lot of people end up getting sick from that because of the little particulate bugs that are in that sand as well. People get, was it desert fever? Valley fever.
Yeah, that's one of the things I watched for really closely out here when we moved back, because when I moved, see, the environment hits children differently. Like when I moved out to Arizona as a kid, the first summer I was here, I got horrible migraines. Migraines that would make me cry, migraines that I would wake up every morning and I would feel okay for the first 10 minutes. And then the migraine would slowly come on. I had such pressure. And I'd have to go outside, and the heat from the sun somehow relieved the pressure in my head. And thank God it only lasted that summer, but I had a terrible migraine. Whatever, I don't know. And I just only assume because you're going from basically a lower elevation, swampy, I don't want to say swampy, but I came from the Great Lakes. So you're going from the Great Lakes area to the desert. And in those days, see, the weather's changed. Things have changed on the planet, whether by artificial means or natural. We don't get the storms we used to. We don't get the huge dust storms we used to. I mean, I remember as a kid out in Arizona, we could count on several really good lightning storms, good monsoons to really clear the air of any pollution. We really don't get that now. It's changed.
Yeah, I have seen a few crazy ass rainstorms there though, where it's flooding the streets. And my mom's backyard, luckily, she has a step up that goes into the sliding glass door, and the water's just like inching up from all this rain all at once. But it's all at once instead of being spread out, at different times. Monsoon season, it must be.
When I say we. Certain areas of Phoenix don't get the storms because they dissipate before they hit the valley. So if you're outside the valley, then you're going to get hit. Sure, yeah, you will. But like where I am, it's hard to get, because usually they've hit the mountains or they. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, they're right down there by South Mountain.
Yeah, see, so you're right on the edge there, so you probably get it. Mm-hmm.
Well, my house, it's insane. I can watch these rain clouds moving in. I'm like, hell yeah, we've been needing rain forever. And it'll get close to my house, and then I swear to God, all the clouds go around my house. Like, the rain does not hit my house, and it'll rain everywhere around it. Finally, yesterday we got some rain, but holy shnikes. It's really agitating because you get the humidity and such in the air, but you don't get the rain that you need with it. So finally it did rain, but still, I feel you there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's us.
It would be great. Rain. Yeah. Yeah, but no more spookiness going on in my house. No objects that move. No ghostly weird thing. It was weird there for a few weeks, about a month. I don't know what was going on as far as objects moving. That hasn't happened.
I wonder if
So
a
that's
neighbor
nice.
died and was hanging out before they went somewhere else and checking out all the neighbors. I've always been curious about these guys. Let's go see.
Well, I know the lady next door to me has had the paramedics call on her several times, and so we all kind of keep an eye on her, the neighbors around here, because her health is frail and she lives by herself. She has no family here, and for her to really move to where she's, where her family is, she says, kind of, moot. It's just too far, too much. Just she says, I have people come check on me. I'm fine. I'm like, well, that's good. So I just been on the other receiving end of, I haven't seen my neighbor for 2 weeks.
What's that
You
smell?
call him up. Yeah. That's what I don't want to be here for that. So
No.
I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you can tell when you work around like that sort of environment, and then you look at sickly people and people on, who are sick and kind of terminal, and you can see and smell death on them. Actually, it's quite scary. That's what freaked me out. That's what freaked me out the most about the medical examiner's office, is seeing the stench of death and smelling it on people, and you can tell they're close to death. Whether it be like here's another eerie thing. 20 years ago, when I worked for the medical examiner's office, one day, my girlfriend's grandmother came into the kitchen, and she's making us dinner and stuff. Standing right next to her, and permeating off her body was the stench of a corpse. I'm not kidding. I thought it was me because, well, I work around the environment, so it's gonna be in me. But it was coming off of her. I leaned over. I said, and I made it sound like she was wearing perfume. I said, "Are you wearing perfume? That smells good." Because I wanted to see if what I was smelling was it coming off me or was it on her person, on her clothes? And she goes, "Oh, go ahead." So I take a huge, it was like I had just walked. I'm not going to get any more graphic, but it was, I smelled it. And then later I asked my girlfriend, I said, "Is your grandmother sick?" She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, like, does she have cancer? Does she have like some eternal illness? Does she have, and she was like, "No." And I'm like, okay. Well, it turns out her grandmother died of cancer later. But I know she had health problems at the time, but she didn't, as far as I can recall, she didn't have anything like cancer or anything like that. But I smelled that, and you smell it on certain people. If you can, it's eerie. You almost don't want that discernment because it comes with the job, and then you lose that over time, sort of. You can recognize it like if you're in a hospital and stuff like that. But I haven't been out like in the populace and smelled it on anybody, but I used to, and I just attuned most of that because it was on me. But that particular incident, I mean, it was coming off her. It was like, how you turn and you feel the breeze off of somebody or off with the coat they're wearing or like that. The smell would come along with that. So it was just like, what's that perfume? I feel bad, but I had to know.
Do you smell?
What? My imagination. Well, see, her house was I think her house was haunted because she had an alarm attached to her door, and every time you'd open the door, it would ring. It would make a ding ding sound. Man, we'd be sitting there on the couch, you hear that ding 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 ding. The thing would be going off like somebody's open the door, shut the door, open the door, shut. I'm like, let's disconnect that thing. Yeah.
Right.
I was like, it's faulty. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking the other day, the teenagers, of course, their friend had come over, so they went out and were hanging out in the car, and I don't get on my phone a lot during the week. I try not to so I can spend time with my family and not be distracted. And my daughter had tried to call me from the driveway at least 12 times, and she left a message, and she's like, if this was an emergency, I'd be halfway to Mexico right now and you'd never find me and so on and so forth. But yeah, could you please answer your phone? Because we need help. I guess at first, Sam, which is her cousin, was like, what is that? And she sees this human type shadow thing out in the field to the left. And at first the other kids don't see it. And then they start seeing it, and then they start seeing more and more and more of them. They were so freaked out. They were so scared. They were not going to leave the vehicle and come into the house. But it makes me wonder, what was it? We do have deer and elk and bucks and whatever coming through the horse field and the field next to us all the time. But this was something different.
There,
huh?
Do you have a cornfield out there anywhere?
No.
Now, here's something interesting. I'm not saying this is what it is, but, talking fields, horse fields, whatever. I just read something on, it was a video, but it was a Reddit video. There was a story of a kid that when he grew up on a farm and he lived, and his room was on the second floor. And he said that his grandfather, I believe, his dad or his grandfather used to say to him,
"Can we finally go to
yeah, don't go out in the cornfields at night. The cornfield demons will get you," because his grandson told him that he saw two red eyes out in the cornfield, and his grandfather or his father said, "Well, those are the cornfield demons, so don't go out in the cornfield at night." And then he said that every now and again he'd be looking out his window and he'd see those two red eyes, and they'd be glowing and walking or moving around out there. So you have to wonder.
Yeah, it's really weird. So behind our house, there's a very large horse field, and it's in like 4 different sections. It's quite immense. It's about 4 city blocks behind our house. And then right next to us is another field, and they often, the old guy that used to live next door, and he was a total perv, he'd sit there and watch the girls in their bathing suits trying to sunbathe, so they never did. But he ended up passing away. But he'd go over there and he'd till it and then plant hay and then, go back with the tractor and cut it all down and put it into bales and sell it. And he was doing that with our field right here and then the field on the other side of his house. And I'm not sure if the main field was used for that too, but is it the hay field demons? We also found out recently when our neighbor was moving. I'm ashamed to say that I have not checked out the museum here. I've thought about it many times, but never gone down there. But supposedly the land that we live on is Indian massacre land. Like there was a really big battle here and a lot of Native Americans died. And when I heard that, I'm like, well, that explains a lot. I thought it was just us attracting the stuff, but perhaps it's the property, which we had always thought in the first place. Even though we started with just one ghost and now have more, but.
Listen, give me 1 second. I just got to switch devices, but keep going. I'm sorry. I just didn't want to vanish and you wonder what happened. That's all.
Oh, no worries. Well, it is actually our second musical break time right now. And on this break, we have Hosni Bronx from the Bronx of New York, originally from Jamaica. He kind of goes back and forth, and he's going to be singing Free Child, as well as Strong Life. And then we have King Cinnamon from Biafra, Nigeria, with Rosie. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this musical break.
Who decided this life for me?
Funky on the beat.
Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you touch me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you touch me, you got me confused. Cinnamon, cinnamon, do it softly. I said you wine your body, eat the sweetie, sweetie. Make it rock my body, I am feeling horny. Make it touch my body, I am feeling sweetie. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you touch me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you touch me, you got me confused. All my men, they wear out. All my guys, they wear out. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. All my men, they wear out. All my guys, they wear out. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Imarama, Imarama, Rosie. Mukomukeji, go bere muketa. Oya mukomukeji, oya bere muketa. Daddy mu ekon, omo ni pe mukeji. Daddy bere muketa, omo ni fún mi lẹ́yìn. Daddy fisi fisi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy saucy saucy, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy kosi kosi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy tohin kosi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy and his baby, them dey for corner. Daddy begin the touch and the girl dey holla. Now daddy begin the open the shirt collar. Now something come out, daddy begin the suck am. Daddy mu ekon, omo ni pe mukeji. Daddy bere muketa, omo ni fún mi lẹ́yìn. Daddy fisi fisi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy saucy saucy, omo ni ẹjọ́ ẹjọ́. All my men they gbero, all my guys they gbero. Imarama, Imarama Rosie, Imarama, Imarama Rosie. All my men they gbero, all my guys they gbero. Imarama, Imarama Rosie, Imarama, Imarama Rosie. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you touch me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you touch me, you got me confused. Cinnamon, cinnamon, do it softly. I see the wine, your body, eat the sweetie, sweetie. Shake it, rock my body, I am feeling horny. Shake it, touch my body, I am feeling sweetie. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you touch me, you got me confused. Suck my boobs, you got my body loose. Anytime you touch me, you got me confused. Kissy, kissy, amani, ejo, daddy saucy, saucy, amani, ejo, daddy kosi, kosi, amani, ejo, daddy kahe kosi, amani, ejo, daddy contact, amani, ejo, daddy comfort, daddy consist, amani, ejo, daddy can eat, daddy 120, amani, ejo, daddy 18, daddy 240, amani, ejo, daddy 360. Daddy and the baby, them there for corner. Daddy begin the touch and the girl they holla. Daddy begin the open the shirt collar. I come to come, daddy begin the sucker. Daddy move, echo, omo ni pe mukeji. Daddy bere muketa, omo ni fún mi lẹ́yìn. Daddy fisi fisi, omo ni ẹjọ́. Daddy saucy saucy, omo ni ẹjọ́ ẹjọ́. All my men they gbero, all my guys they gbero. Imarama, 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 Imarama.
Oh yeah, it's funky on the beat.
Babylon to make you suffer. Babylon to make you suffer. Babylon to make you suffer. Babylon no have no heart. Babylon no have no heart. My people, you have to survive. Yeah, you must rebuild you and make your own way. You must not give up. The beginning of the revolt will start. We need to follow our true destiny. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah, 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 yeah. I don't know, whoa, why my people live this life. I don't know, whoa, why my people live this life. The obstacle we face, yeah, is Babylon. The world is a good place, yeah, for our freedom. You take everything, you don't bring anything, yeah, yeah. Young life, all anti-dread. We must believe in a magical, powerful force that unite us, and not just these people stay speechless again. We don't want to talk, no, it's time to fight, yeah. We start talking. Babylon make you suffer. 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 What the desire? Young life. We are ready to fight.
Welcome back, and thanks so much for joining us tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Tonight, we are joined by SleepyDave Davenport. He's our weekday host, and he does the Time Slip Cafe. Make sure you check that out. It's an awesome show. I really enjoy listening to it. So I hope you guys catch it on Mondays, Fridays, and sometimes he'll surprise us with a random day. But welcome back, Sleepy. Thanks for hanging out with me.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Sorry to interrupt you during that bite.
Homemade cinnamon roll.
Ooh. Man, last time I had those, my Aunt Teresa made them. Go ahead.
I was going to say I have to give a shout out to my neighbor because she's so cool. This is one of Melody's friends. Her mother, the girls met each other one day out swimming. So now and again, you know, she'll text me, I overbaked. Would you guys like some cinnamon rolls? I said, sure. So I was just telling Tess, I have to think of doing something nice for her, you know, because she's a nice lady.
Ooh, a really easy one that's really cheap is some no-bake cookies. All you need is cocoa, peanut butter, oatmeal. I like to use, instead of 3 cups of oatmeal, 2 cups of oatmeal and 1 cup of toasted coconut. Oh my god, it makes it so good. Tablespoon of vanilla, sugar, and you're golden. Oh, butter. You need a stick of butter too. That's a good easy one. Huh? What'd you say through that deliciousness?
I'm on a diet. Don't do that. Don't do that. Like this has, I mean, look at this. Has nice cream cheese, sweet filling. Oh my gosh, it's heaven. I was like, this is better than Cinnabon. I'm like, lady, you need to have your own. Lacey, you need to have your own Cinnabon. Freaking, I tell you, this lady's talented. Immediately when Melody tasted it, she says she should go on the Iron Chef.
That's pretty good. Yeah, maybe if you could get a van.
So we got some urban legends.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe if you could get a van and have her cook the cinnamon rolls, you could go to different work sites and sell them, because, damn, people would pay like $4 for those.
I know, they're huge. A huge one. I mean, these aren't any small ones. This will fill me up. If you're feeling down around lunchtime, just eat one of Lace and Lacey's laced Cinnabons.
Okay, so due to Jack Mackeral, a.k.a. Dan, having to leave early and not having our original cast on, I was thinking about doing urban legends instead. Luckily, we had Jack Mackeral and SleepyDave step in and help me out, but I do have some urban legends to share, and this one is called Invasion of the Body Part Snatchers. In the early 90s, a new invasion story circulating around North America, Europe, the Indian subcontinent, and large parts of Africa quickly made all the old legends seem, well, almost unimportant. An American example begins in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, during the famous Mardi Gras celebrations. William Rowe, a single guy, came to town on business, but soon found himself caught up in the party spirit. When a group in his hotel's bar spilled out onto the street, he staggered right along. The parades, the dancing, the food, the half-naked women, and especially the bourbon, swirled into single experience, then nothing. Rowe awoke the next morning, not on his bed or curled up on his coat in one of the city's parks, but back in his own hotel room, in the bathtub. A tub full of ice water, the cubes floating all around his shivering body. Before he could pull himself out, he noticed that someone had been rearranging his furniture. A desk chair dragged into the bathroom held a phone and a note. Still in a state of shock, Rowe picked up the note. Dear sir, reach behind you and feel your back. You need to see a doctor immediately. Do not move. Do not leave the tub. Louisiana is on the emergency response network. Call 911 and you have been warned. On feeling his way across his back, Rowe quickly discovered a tube running from a surgical incision. When he could finally get his shaking fingers to tap out 911, the operator who answered his call repeated the warning. Do not get out of the tub, sir. I have emergency personnel on the way. Don't leave the tub. The EMS team that arrived, far from being surprised by his predicament, seemed all too familiar with the situation and rushed him to a local hospital where the emergency staff there too appeared to know more about what had happened to him than he did. After being pushed through a battery of tests, he was tucked in bed to await the doctor's verdict. Someone had stolen his kidney. In addition to the poorly investigated news reports that typically turn up when any urban legend first sweeps into a new region, this legend became the plot for a widely seen primetime series. Despite its usual disclaimer, the people and situations depicted herein are fictitious. Law & Order is well known for its ripped from the headline stories. So, when two New York City cops discovered a blood-soaked man, alive but minus a kidney, on a Central Park bench in Sonata for Solo, Oregon, it would be surprising if the audience didn't assume the entire scenario was reality-based. Fortunately, marauding gangs of organ thieves aren't yet lurking at Mardi Gras celebrations, picking up likely candidates in bars or casing the dormitories of America. Anyone waking up in a bathtub full of ice cubes is undoubtedly the butt of a practical joke, but nothing more. So prevalent did the stories of stolen organs, kidneys in particular, become during the middle 90s, however, that the National Kidney Foundation in the United States and Transplant Ontario in Canada both established permanent websites to deal with the multitude of inquiries flooding with switchboards daily. The location of choice for the phone in the bathroom might be the United States, but the land of opportunity probably isn't the point of origin for this tale. Selling organs is illegal here. Other countries considered body parts property that can be freely bought and sold, so freely, in fact, that Amel Kak, a citizen of Turkey, took out an ad announcing he had a spare kidney for sale. He ended up in Great Britain and was shortly relieved of his kidney. A simple business transaction concluded to everyone's satisfaction, right? Sort of. Almost as soon as Cock's kidney hit the ice chips, he started screaming theft. The story took up its share of headlines, was even reported in the United States via BBC's World Service newscast. It's a sad fact that wild claims get airtime while court decisions, like the one provoking Cock had willingly given up his kidney, are lucky to find their way into the footnotes. Even if there are unscrupulous surgeons willing to sneak out an extra organ from time to time, 3 Indian doctors face such charges as this book goes to press. Even if third world poverty ensures an endless supply of those desperate enough to give up parts of themselves for cash, the basis of the current version of The Phone in the Bathroom, the unwary traveler invaded while innocently involved in some social activity, has absolutely no basis in fact. But when, they're saying that, I've heard so many stories of different people across the United States waking up without parts or never waking up because they took everything. Did you have any of that?
No. And not in any case that I worked on. Not in any case that I picked up. No. I think we had, as far as crime, this never, I just want to make it clear, this never was said by any law enforcement agency during this pickup, but questions were asked along the investigative line because the case, we picked up a guy in one of the old parts of Washington, D.C., and these old tenement apartment homes, they're really close together, and these stairs going upstairs are really narrow. So this feller died upstairs, and we had to, when we put him on the gurney, we had to, what I'm looking for, stand him upright, basically, and walk him downstairs upright, strapped to the gurney. And it took about 6 of us. 3 in the front, 3 in the back, and or 2 on the side, on each side, and people guiding because we had to walk it. We had to walk this corpse downstairs. So when we get him downstairs and he's laying on the gurney or whatever, or the Reeves, whatever you call it, one of the paramedics or whatever, the medical investigator says, "Well, the time of death doesn't jive for what." I forget what family member. It was some family member's name, he said. And he goes, "Oh, yeah, well, let's go outside and talk about it." I go, "Ooh. Doesn't sound right." Because while I'm zipping up the body, and I have to tag the body, so as I'm getting my tag out and writing his name, his date of birth, and the general information, as I'm tagging his ankle, I hear this woman behind me saying, "Oh, he definitely died of natural causes. It was no Oh, why you questioning? What's wrong, officer? What do you mean the time of death doesn't add up? And then she followed him outside, and I was like, "Oh shit!" So I don't know if anybody was arrested from it. I don't know if they pushed the old man or what, but that was kind of suspicious. I showed up at a suicide one day. That wasn't very. It was. He jumped off. I don't know how many stories. Let's just say 10. Sounds like a nice round number. It was very high.
Hey.
So this is what he did. Now, this apartment building was old-fashioned, made of brick, and all the apartments are inside, and you have to have a special key or whatever to get in. And so he parked in the back. He walked to the front, and this is all on surveillance. He walked to the front, went inside, went right up to the elevator, went right into his apartment, and basically within seconds of walking through his apartment door, basically ran and dove out the back bedroom window head first onto the pavement. I mean, they barely traced his steps from him pulling up, going out, matching the time and everything. It was just like basically he decided to drive home and kill himself as soon as he got in the door. And you have to wonder about people who do that. Is this are these like entities getting into people, making them do, or do they just say, fuck it, I'm just going to, I'm going to fly out the window. Woo. I mean, that was like another James Forrestal kind of thing right there, and one of I've picked up deaths on, the Navy base and stuff. I'm not saying that they're nefarious or paranormal or criminal. I'm just saying, some of the places I've had access to. One lady died while pumping gas on the Navy base out there in Annapolis. Can you imagine dying while pumping gas? How horrible. And nobody wanted to touch her. No, but nobody wanted to touch her, man. I said, come on. I said, this lady's big and, no offense, several hundred pounds. I can't move her by myself, guys. Cops are just looking at me, neighbor guys. I said, so finally, one of the cops helped me put her on the gurney. Well, nobody would want to touch her.
It's hard to know what to do sometimes. Like, some people go into shock. Some people are like, ew, cuties.
I don't know why she died.
Yeah.
I've seen how people do that. Yeah, I've seen, different cultures do their rituals and how they, lay the body and sprinkle it with spices and whatever else that they do. There's a certain burial procedure, when I had to pick up, somebody of Jewish descent. So you learn a lot about the culture of people and their, the way they respect the dead and people who pass on. I'd get certain instructions sometimes when I'd go to certain funeral homes.
That's a mellow tune.
So, yes, that's horrid lyrics. Oh my gosh.
I just saw this thing that is making me laugh. It's under Scary Things. And this book I found in a creepy looking old, those little houses they build for books and anybody can take them as long as they bring them back.
Uh-huh.
This one is the As Complete as One Could Be Guide to Modern Myths, Urban Legends by N.E. Jang. But yeah, I saw that in there and I wasn't going to take anything, but I was like, man, that looks interesting out of all the books in there. Because, I like reading nonsense. But
what are the chances of that book being in there too, though?
Right, like my husband wanted to go to this music store in this neighborhood that we generally don't go to, and there's this thing right next to the car, and I'm like, hey, I took a picture of it. I don't remember if I shared it or not, but so here it says, the best horror flicks, the best thrillers, and the best urban legends all play into our most common fears. Here are a few of the least common. Though they're legitimate phobias, most sound like the plots of comedies instead of tragedies. And these are the different phobias that people have, and it's just making me laugh. Like, I can't imagine having this phobia. One is paladophobia, which is fear of bald people. Geniophobia, which is fear of chins. Oh, this one is a big one. Coprastasophobia, fear of constipation.
Oh, jeez.
Pediophobia. What?
Isn't that crapophobia?
Crapophobia, yeah. Make sure. Make sure if you have to take painkillers, if you had surgery or whatnot, take those stool softeners because it could get really scary really fast. Pediophobia is a fear of dolls. Owlophobia is a fear of flutes. Aperophobia is fear of infinity. Genophobia is fear of knees. Pantherophobia, fear of a mother-in-law. There's a lot of people out there that have that. Epistaxiophobia, fear of nosebleeds. Lutrophobia, fear of otters. You ought to not mess with that one. Arachibutyrophia, fear of peanut butter. Holy shnikes. Fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of the mouth. Metrophobia, fear of poetry. Puppophobia, fear of puppets. Then we have epistaxiophobia. Okay, I already said that one. Fear of nosebleeds. Okay, ombrophobia, fear of rain. Homeliophobia, fear of sermons.
I I think
Manano.
people just make it go along.
Yeah, I have this phobia of sermons, so I can't go to church with you this Sunday. Instead of I'm gonna sit here and play my banjo and drink some mint juleps.
Here's one. Did you know that Wackenhut, at the time of this printing of this book I'm reading, which is 1999, and this was well known, but for people who may not have known, Wackenhut contract is to provide perimeter security for the notorious Area 51. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
They had the outside. Yeah, they patrolled the perimeter for Area 51 for years. Wackenhut did. I used to know a few guys.
That, because I've always wondered, you see these guys pull up and they get out and they look like, your next door neighbor wearing camo with a M16 or whatever. Like, these don't look like military guys, so private, right?
Here it says, uniformed Wackenhuts have repeatedly come into contact with the saucer watchers and UFO spotters who try to get as close to Area 51 as possible. Reports from members of the public claim that Wackenhuts have threatened them at gunpoint, confiscated video and camera equipment, and attempted to run vehicles off the road. Seemingly a major concern among those who have experienced these confrontations at Area 51 is the youth of some of the Wackenhut guards, some being scarcely more than teenagers who are heavily armed and apparently convinced they are some kind of elite force. All right, I don't know about the last part, but yeah, Wackenhut, it was true.
Wackenhut.
Mid-90s. Yeah, Wackenhut had that. I don't think so now after the secret got out of the bag and it got to be kind of a laughing stock, Because Wackenhut was a big security company back in the 90s. I don't know about the 90s. Pinkerton and all those guys. Pinkerton, I think became, they were bought out, I believe, by Securitas, if I remember correctly.
Those bastards! They're here too. Like, it's a white security truck and it's in Spanish instead of security is like Securitos or whatever. There's nobody ever in the truck and there's nobody ever around. There's just a truck parked there, and I'm like, we tried to get that contract for security, but you have to make $5 million or more with your company and be able to prove it in order to work for Walmart. Like, that's ridiculous. If Sam Walton was still around, he'd hire us, but now that he's gone and it's just ridiculous, like, you have to be a big company in order to work for us now.
Oh, geez. Yeah. See, back before 9/11, what a lot of people don't understand about the security industry, they'd hire anybody off the street. Now that that's not bad or good or indifferent. I mean, there's plenty of homeless people that I knew because of those jobs were able to get themselves up and going again. Whereas now they wouldn't probably be able to hold any position whatsoever, which is kind of sad. You take the good with the bad, but overall it wasn't bad. But you had the guards are the one who really get screwed in the end because you don't have honest, usually companies. Like a company will get, say they'll contract their guards out for a company at say $20 an hour or $15 an hour or whatever it is, and then they'll turn around and give that guard. See, you say 25, well,
but they give them 15.
Well, but in those days when they were given 20 and 25 an hour, the rates were $8 an hour for a guard. So they're keeping all that money and fucking the guards, fucking the officers, and then slowly it went up to 10 and slowly 12. I mean, in 14 years, we haven't gone up really at all as a nation in wages. I don't want to make this a wage talk, but if I can make $12 an hour in 2004. And now we're just getting in that as a minimum wage. At least that is out here. In other places, it's worse. Like Ohio, I think it's like $8 or $9. And the federal wage is supposed to be 11, so they're not even adhering to the federal minimum wage. I could be wrong about that.
There's so many people that do that. How do they not get caught? I don't get it.
It is because they're a lot of them are fly-by-nighters. They're here for 5, 6, 7 years and then they vanish.
Well, go ahead.
Or like a lot of the URL monitoring companies went to the wayside between, I'd say, 1995 and 2000, because used to have to be these big security rooms that would monitor businesses and homes as well. Well, since the advent of all the personal security stuff, especially now with the doorbell, companies like ADT, Amerix Security, I'm not just calling them out, I'm just using it as an example. A lot of them are regional, a lot of them maybe national, like ADT is. I can't speak for them, but like that industry has shrunk a little bit. I remember I used to do URL security monitoring, and there were like 12 of us. And then by the time everything got said and done, that security company was bought and sold so many times. And then it just turned out to be a flaky, what appeared to be front organization. And it went from strictly in-office computer URL monitoring to try to go into what you do and, actually physically get the officers out there and do that sort of contracting. And it was a complete and utter failure. And a few of them are still around that are out of the valley for a long time. That are good companies, but these accounts have been here for, 20, 30 years. So they got to lock in.
Yeah, we've been doing the fair and stuff for at least 15, and we've always charged the same amount, $25 an hour. Luckily, they are still doing the fair, but it's much smaller, so it's going to be a much smaller check. But we do charge $25 per hour per officer, and then pay the officers $15 per hour because we do have to pay for our insurance, which is very expensive. So we're not really trying to screw them, but we have to pay for our T-shirts and
you got to pay for
other stuff. And yeah.
But these guys are taking I've worked for just horrible bosses that literally they take your cost of living raise, and I'm talking like government entities, and they spend it on bullshit that they never. And I don't understand how they can get away with it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I just don't, I had a boss of mine, he bought a security outfit, like security computer thingy, I don't know. And he had it set up, but he didn't have it set up, if that makes sense. He didn't have it hooked into anything. And one day he comes into the office and he says, "How do you run this thing? What's the password?" I said, "I don't know, man. You never gave it to anybody." I said, it's been sitting here for 3 months, dude. I'm like, how am I supposed to know? There went, and my buddy Cooper, who I worked with, he goes, really nice guy. He goes, after the boss leaves, he sits there, puts a pipe in his mouth. He goes, "That motherfucker stole and spent our cost of living raise." He goes, "There's your cost of living raise, white boy. There it is, right there." He was a tall, skinny black man. I mean, he's the coolest guy I've ever met, man. This guy was great. And he's sitting back there in the office with the pipe in his mouth. He goes, "How do you feel, white boy, being screwed over like that?" He goes, "See, the white man don't give a shit about you either." He's laughing and stuff. See, I don't take that as racist comments. I think it's funny because it's the truth. That's what he did.
Right.
I'm not hating on it.
Got to roll with the punches. I'm going to finish this short list, and then I'm going to move on to another one. Okay, so linonophobia, fear of string, turnonophobia, fear of being tickled with feathers, parthenophobia, fear of virgins, plutophobia, fear of wealth, and rhytiphobia, fear of wrinkles. Oh, man.
I guess I had that as a kid.
Right? Fear of wrinkles?
I look at old people and they'd scare me. Just because I'm thinking like the age of like between 3 and 5. The discovery stage. Like, ooh, like why do they look like that? There's so many people look up, but you don't know. You're a kid. What the hell do you know? But
it can be scary, especially because they look like mantos. There's a manto. No, that's your grandma.
My grandma. Yeah, right. My grandmother. Speaking of urban legends, here's an urban legend my grandmother used to tell. When the street lights would come on at night, she would say, "If you don't come in, if you wait outside long enough, a witch wagon is going to come and get you and take you away, and you'll never come back." I said, "The witch wagon?" She said, "Oh, yeah, I feel playing as kids with Mama. Don't get it, kids, you better get in here. The witch wagon going to get you." I said, "What's the witch wagon?" What? Can anybody Google that? The witch, is that a real thing?
You
I
never seen
bothered.
Pinocchio?
Witch wagon. I don't know. I just akin it to, the witch is going to come and boil us a stew. I don't know.
Yeah, they come put you on the wagon. They probably would. Witches, generally do eat children or turn them into mice or whatever, because I've heard different stories, like to witches, children are the worst smell in the world. But then you hear other stories of witches cooking up kids and eating them. So makes you wonder, what's the real story? Guess it depends on the witch.
It goes back to cannibalism and ritual sacrifices, there you go, of children. Paganistic shit. Way back in ancient times. We're talking BC. Go ahead, I'm sorry, sweet.
Yeah, it's scary. I think they're still around, but it's kind of different today, depending on where you're at. A lot of these, going back to Randonautica, a lot of these Randonautica things show up at different places that do look like places where witches would live, and there's cauldrons and different stick things hanging everywhere, like the Blair Witch Project, and it's funny.
Yeah, I imagine that from the time that you download the application, do all the stuff that you're supposed to do, hone in on your blah blah, that they're already in motion setting something up.
Well, I've downloaded it already. I just haven't used it yet.
Right.
Because I don't want to pull it up and get a location and then not be able to go there because I can't, because I got to cook dinner and clean up after everybody and, wipe everyone's ass. But eventually I'm going to get out there and I'm going to drag the teenagers along with me because, it'll be funny. But I'm intrigued to see what's going on and how do they actually do it? Do they have people all over the world hey, yeah, I'll sign up for this? And because there's a lot of times that people do talk about cars following them. And there was this one video that I watched where they're being followed, so they pulled over, and this fucking car pulls over right in front of them and sits there and waits. And so they're watching it for a while, and then they go back to the app or whatever, and then they look up and the car's gone. So it makes you wonder, what exactly is happening there? Well, this one is about Halloween, and it goes as such. Of all holidays, Halloween, perhaps not surprisingly, is the lone event to inspire nothing but tales of the morbid. Though this first one is less well known than those that follow, The Rising is one of my favorites because it still retains a certain naivety. The horror arising more in imagination than in any actual physical harm. It begins in the tiny community of Cryptids, in the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador, a province folklorists universally agree is an amazing microcosm of old world tradition. In fact, historians, linguists, and folklorists from all over Europe regularly trek across the ocean to trace the origins of their own tales. It's a land of mummers and ribbles, where snatches of language still carry the listener to tiny vales in Cornwall and Wales. Needless to say, people that cling to their roots so tenaciously also remember their tales and songs. The Rising, a trial of murderers, traces its lineage back to early Welsh custom. It's believed that a corpse, touched by its murderer, wells blood from wounds if they were the cause of death, from the mouth if death was by poisoning, from the eyes like tears if magic was the cause. You may recall elements of this story in the Black Aggie, tells of cemetery statues that condemn killers and take revenge for their owners. Like other trials and ordeals, the results aren't open to debate. Children imitate their elders, even to copying their fears, beliefs, and superstitions. With variation, in Cupid's and neighboring Brigus tells of Rising mutated into a Halloween trial of courage almost as important as the amount of tooth-rotting junk food that could be collected. First, the grave of a murderer, or, failing that, a victim must be located. Though the cemeteries of these tiny communities aren't exactly stocked with either killers or their prey, they're overflowing with headstones so old it's nearly impossible to read anything on their faces, which means any one of those old stones could mark a killer's grave, right? Having located the right grave, those aspirants to pure worship produce the next element of the ritual, the knife. As they huddle in the darkness on Halloween night, the knife flashes down, impaling the corner of a coat in the dirt. Pinned in place, the candidate is left behind under orders not, under any circumstances, to pull the knife free. If they're brave enough, nothing will happen. If not, if they even think of getting away, the blood of the corpse, regardless of how long deceased, will bubble up through the ground under the knife, marking the coward's close and process. Though few parents were washing blood from their children's coats on November 1st, an amazing number of accidents required small holes in the corners of jackets to be mended. It wasn't cemeteries that were outlawed during the next Halloween, but pocket knives. Less innocent is the hung hayman. In the United States, Thanksgiving and Halloween often merge into a single long vest time celebration, with decorations for one holiday being altered only slightly for the other. Scarecrows, corn wreaths, and pumpkins sit happily alongside each other on porches everywhere. Even events like hayrides, which in Canada and Great Britain are reserved for Thanksgiving, have become popular Halloween treats with a few extra touches. In Chicago, a haunted hayride carried riders past dozens of locations, each one sporting some spectacular decoration or performance. At one house, a hanging appeared to take place when Brian Jewell, standing atop a homemade gallows, said his last words and then stepped off into space. Of course, the scene was carefully set and Jewell had no intention of hanging himself. The driver became seriously concerned when, on his next round, there was no speech, no jump, nothing, just the guy dangling there. Saying nothing to his passengers, he continued on, becoming more and more anxious. His apprehension proved well-founded. Something had gone terribly wrong. The noose, which was designed not to tighten, failed, leaving Jewell dead by hanging. Tragically, the tale was true. Equally tragically, it's not a lone incident. At least 3 other people, Carlos Edmetzko, Bill Odom, and Frank Callywell, are known to have died while acting out similar scenarios for Halloween. So urban legends, resilient under the worst of conditions, thrive among high-tech gizmos like fax machines and email, which allow modern myths to travel faster than ever and pop up over and over like chain letters. The following warning flew across the internet in dozens of different forums, all specific to local locations, of course. In October of 94, 95, 97, and 98, wonder what happened to 96, a massive early preemptive debunking throughout the media and university system. So it says, warning, 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 students at Michigan State University, please take note that noted psychic Yvonne DeBar, while appearing on the Oprah program on November 11th, made the following prediction. I have seen this clearly. A madman, a mass murderer, will assault the very cream of this country's youth. A bomb, something in the food. I can't tell, but it will kill dozens, maybe hundreds, on Halloween, this Halloween. It's at a university in a public building shaped like an H, or maybe a T. A lot of students congregate there. Yes, I see it. Fire and noise, a bomb, it'll kill them. And then it goes back to, please warn everyone you know on campus. Call their parents, notify university administrators and staff to the urgent danger facing them. Ms. DeBornier is a certified physical researcher whose predictions have been heard by presidents and major CEOs. Her accuracy rating published in major newspapers is over 95%. This is no joke. Please add your voice to those currently contacting Michigan State University and local law enforcement. Ensure the safety of our students. So despite the repeated debunkings between outbursts, this story proved mushroom-like in its ability to appear full-grown. Just before Halloween, causing panic at numerous locations and tying up resources of police, university staff, and incidentally, the public relations personnel at the Oprah Winfrey Show, who regularly issue statements to the effect that no such person ever appeared on her program, that no such prediction was made, and that no one was threatened. Of course, the most pervasive Halloween legend rests firmly on factual occurrences. The short version, that nasty people all over the country are putting sharp, pointy things in Halloween treats, given out to innocent children is absolutely true. However, even truth isn't always what it seems. Dozens of cases get reported and investigated every year. The results of those investigations paint a picture quite different from that of the psychopath sitting in his darkened room, staring into his TV screen, waiting for news of innocent lives he snuffed out to hit the media. In most incidents, the objects, pins and needles, occasionally bits of broken razor blades, are found by parents, not children. Of the objects found by children, a significant number were put into treats of parents or by parents. There appear to be at least as many parents anxious for some form of media attention as there are actual nutcases in search for their moment of fame. And odd as this may sound, in some cases it's the children themselves who've doctored their bag of goodies. So comprehensive studies in the New York and New Jersey region reveal that even those cases legitimately attributed to random insanity, actually injury is rare. A couple of stitches seems the upper limits of medical intervention needed. While it's impossible to condone even the level of violence and disregard human welfare, it's important to note that nowhere are there waves of serious injuries, certainly not deaths, attached to trick-or-treating. It's significant to realize that Halloween, which, from pedophiles' predatory point of view, presents a smorgasbord of opportunity, has no statistical relevance to the number of kidnaps, assaults, or murders perpetrated against children. Apparently, Halloween just isn't a big deal for most criminals. But that reminds me of a story, and I think it was back in the 70s, maybe early 80s, where they had gone trick-or-treating, and then the father had put some sort of poison into a pixie stick and allowed his poor kid to die from that, and was saying it happened in the certain neighborhood, and then they finally tracked it back to him. It's insane what people try to pull just to get their 15 minutes of fame or whatever the heck they're looking for. I couldn't imagine doing that to my child or anyone, for that matter. But we do still check the Halloween candy, and we check it good. We'll try several pieces.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Here's an urban legend I found. It's a real short paragraph. Very interesting. Since mid-1995, it's called Army of the Dead. Since mid-1995, the rumor has been circulating in some of the more fearful sectors of the internet that Islamic fundamentalist agents are roaming northern and central Africa, recruiting an army of men who are either HIV positive or have full-blown AIDS. Initially, these doomed recruits would be used on suicide mission or as human bombs, much like the Shaheed killers. Hold on one, babe. Currently directed by the Hamas terror group, happily to die in the service of Allah as warriors in the jihad, be assured of their place in paradise. As the pandemic continues to spread, however, this army of dead will increase in size until it's able to mount full-scale human wave attacks and possibly commence a great march of destruction on South Africa, Israel, or even Europe.
So they're just going to roam around and rape and pillage and spread the disease? There's much easier ways to do that. What are they doing exactly?
Basically taking people who are infected with AIDS and arming them, making them suicide victims. I guess the desired effect would be, infected body parts and blood, pathogens flying everywhere, infecting people. I guess that was one of their ways of their definition of biological warfare, which is, like I said, as the text stated, it was a rumor. But here, I'm like, here's Black Vulcans. Like Black Vulcans. Black Vulcans, the name derived from the Afro-Vulcan delta-wing atom bombers of the 1950s, have become a popular tag given to vast triangular UFOs with a bright light at each of their three corners. Have you ever heard it referred to as a Black Vulcan?
No.
Let's see. In 1989, two Belgian Air Force F-16 fighters locked onto a Black Vulcan and proceeded to behave in a manner impossible for any conventional aircraft. Remember the Belgian UFO wave in 1989? That was a big one.
I don't remember it, but I think that's why my dad was going off so hard, and we actually thought we saw a UFO approaching us, and everybody on this highway had pulled over to the side. Everybody's got out. They're taking pictures or they're looking and pointing, and then all of a sudden you can hear the noise. It was silent at first, but then you could hear helicopters, and it was just helicopters in a formation. It was so strange.
Here's another one, another paragraph for you. This is about Aleister Crowley, I believe. Yeah. It's called The Book of Lies. Now, I'm just pulling this out. I haven't read this book in the 20 years. I've read this book for 20 years. The Book of Lies, published in 1912 by British occult leader Aleister Crowley, apparently in complete contravention of the rules of Ordo Templi Orientis that he headed at the time. The Book of Lies was a coded instruction manual in various methods, rites, and practices of sexual magic. These included one technique whereby prolonged and mutual oral sex could be used as a form of occult meditation. By all accounts, the Book of Lies was chock full of fun, but the kicker was that you first had to crack the highly complex and symbolic codes. So I wonder if anybody out there has ever dabbled with that. Because you hear of all these people in paranormal and investigating this, and you know, I don't want to pick on any particular sort of New Age, I'll say religion, because it's not about that, you know, but I've met people, I'll just say, who practice Wicca, and then they'll do some sort of incantation or what he just talked about there, and then you soon find out that they're students of or followers of or have read the literature of Aleister Crowley. So then you wonder, are you a Wiccan or are you a Luciferian? What are you? And sometimes they don't even know. You know, they say, oh, I have no label. I just believe this, that, or the other thing.
I would ask Joe Roop, because he seems to know a lot about Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, because, you know, there's a lot of good old information out there. And it takes time to sift through it all. That's why,
who
like
I'd
I
pick.
say...
Mr. Roop. See if he's tried that. That'd be interesting to know.
And there was Alice Bailey, I believe, was another occultist, man. And if you care to, for the audience, I'm just kind of giving it a plug. But maybe I'll try to have Brian on the show. He's been busy and he's had some medical issues, and but he was very well researched and read into Alice. Yeah. Oh wow. That's funny. Alice. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Alice Bailey and her occult writings and the plan for depopulation and how they wanted to bring the Luciferianism out into the open in their destruction of how they would do it, how they would bring down basically America. It was pretty scary. And so he's been kind of going through that and teaching on that and reading some of her writings and what she has had to say. So I wonder if Joe Roop knows about her too.
He could. Oh, Mooney's in the chat room. Hi, Mooney. Sorry I didn't see you there. Hello. Okay, so this is a little bitty short one, like you said, a little paragraph going on, and it's called A Window on Microsoft. Techies have some of the best legends, and GIGO, or is it GIGO? I think it's GIGO. The acronym for Garbage In, Garbage Out remains one of the most popular short legends about one of the largest corporations, Microsoft. If the legend is true, those of you with high-powered microscopes can look at your computer processing chips and see how the company's employees really feel about their boss. Engraved in micrometer-sized letters, Bill sucks. Wouldn't it be perfect if it were true? But this one is just a legend.
That's funny. It reminds me of people who take pictures of stitched messages in clothing. One of them I saw on the back of underwear was, I have a toothache, help.
Help. I can't get out of here. I'm in slave labor making this underwear.
Yeah.
And
Basically, yeah, they were stitching messages like, get us out of here.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I shouldn't laugh at that. Now I'm certainly going to hell.
You know, well, Jack Mackeral was funny earlier. I remember years ago, I used to make fun of him because he never would like his picture taken, this and that. So one time he went on vacation to Chicago, and he came back with a panoramic photo of him And it was a very nice photo of him. He's standing there, and there's the nice water out there and the sailboats, and he's smiling. I said, "See, that's a nice picture. Why why don't you?" He's like, "No." He's like, "I was forced into that picture." I said, "What do you mean forced?" He said, "My buddy's wife told me that if I didn't pose for the picture and smile, she was going to beat me up, and I believe her over him." But I gave him a lot of my books on research, so he's held a lot of them for me for years.
That's awesome.
We have original books from Major Donald Kehoe, one of the earliest really researchers. I think, Major Donald Kehoe. When the government was. I know we got 3 minutes, so I'll shut up.
We have 2 minutes and 3 seconds, and this is the outro.
Alrighty, but check them out. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much again for hanging out with me, SleepyDave Davenport.
Thank you. I just kind of mumbled there, but thank you, and thank you, Jack Mackerel and Mooney. Hope you're feeling better, and everybody else. You have a great weekend. Be here tomorrow night.
We have Mr. Frederick Woodward. He's a doctor, and he's talking about perceptual hypnosis and other things. He's even investigated like the paranormal and such, so I'm pretty excited to hear what he has to say. But thank you to all of our friends on We Are Paradox Media's Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Periscope, iHeartRadio, and wherever else you may be listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. I had a wonderful time, and I can't wait to do it again tomorrow night. Like I said, Mr. Frederick Woodward is in the house with perceptual hypnosis. You guys don't forget, we are all in this together. Together we can make the world a little better, and together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you guys, there is no us. Like, otherwise me and SleepyDave would be doing shows for each other. If you'd like to join on the Skype after party, look me up at tessa.n.thomas30 or call 970-335-9596, and I'll get back to you. But make sure you check out SleepyDave on Mondays and Fridays, sometimes surprisingly throughout the week, at Time Slip Cafe. Until next time, you guys, night-night, love and light. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we will see you back here, same time, same place tomorrow night. I also want to thank our supporters. We have Mr. Jim Morrison, who not only has supported us monetarily, but he helps to support the We Are Paradox Media page on Facebook. We got Mr. Mooney. He's helped us out. Mr. Dale Elson. Also Mia Savage. We have a lot of cool people out there helping us keep going with the show.
Moon did a good job on the Tesla Tower.